brainstorm and her vision for what we could do here, how we could educate people, and how we can celebrate such a momentous occasion in the history of New York State. And I just want to acknowledge that and thank her. And thank the members of the committee who are here, and thank the board for taking this on as a project. Before we begin with the discussion, I would like to tell you a little bit about Lisa Cortes. Lisa Cortes is an Academy Award nominated American film and television producer and director, and she's the co-director of All in the Fight for Democracy. It's an Amazon original documentary. We may talk a little bit about that, how that happens, featuring Stacey Abrams. She produced the Emmy-nominated HBO documentary, The Apollo. If you have not seen it yet, make sure that you do that forthwith. Absolutely. It's a wonderful documentary, which explores African American history through the story of the legendary Apollo Theater. Her directorial debut, The Remix, Hip Hop X Fashion, traces the impact of street fashion and African American creativity on global cultural trends and streams on Netflix right now. She was executive producer of the Academy Award-winning film Precious, and her film productions have received over 70 international awards and nominations. Lisa Cortes launched her early career as a music executive at the iconic Def Jam label and Rush Artist Management. She was also vice president of A&R at Mercury Records, where she worked with stars such as Vanessa Williams and Brian McKnight, and founded Loose Cannon label. The Cortes Film Chief Executive Officer is a member of the Producers Branch of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, and she's a member of the Boards of Film at Lincoln Center, ITVS, and the Literary Committee of Yadi. Ms. Cortes attended Yale University, where she majored in American Studies, the School of Visual Arts in New York, and later the New York Film Academy. Thank you, Ms. Cortes, for coming and sharing your thoughts about your work with us. That was just a little long, but many of you do not know who she is. And all of this is part of learning about history, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So we should know we're learning current history, history as it unfolds. And people like Ms. Cortes are often hidden to us as producers and directors. So first, I'd like to begin by asking you to discuss what is required, what skills are required to be a producer and director? How does that differ, and how do you transition from one to the other when you are wearing both hats in a production?
Thank you, Lisa. Good evening, everyone. And I hope you are well. I send a warm embrace to everyone who came out tonight. I also want to echo what Lisa said about Madge, her fearless leadership, and everyone else on the committee who was so committed to making certain that this week and all the different components and people who live here had the opportunity to contribute to this important conversation in recognition of Abolition Day, because Abolition Day is every day. You know, the freedom struggle is such that we need to have these moments, have these films, that we plant our flag and give a constant, vigilant reminder of why we have to keep pressing forward. So,
absolutely.
That's the first part of being a producer and director, is being bossy and having a lot of opinions. You know, I think for the longest time I was a producer. So the producer is someone who is in lockstep with the artist, whether it's a music artist from those days or if it's the director. And what I love when I produce is that I get to work, when I see the credits on a film, I've worked with every single person there, and I have been able to facilitate the vision and the impact of the project. You don't do things in a silo. The work that I do always has to have an agenda of how can it be of service to my community. And so as a producer, it's not only working with the creative and hiring the right people, but it's also looking at the marketing, looking at the life that your film has after you've spent nights up and lots of tears and disappointments, but there is that joy in the morning, and the joy is getting it out there, and the producer is the one who is always moving it forward, keeping it in budget, keeping it in schedule, and making certain that it reaches as many people as possible. A couple of years ago, because I've worked with directors so closely in both the narrative and the documentary space, I have been creatively involved, intimately, and I decided to put the director hat on, because why not? And I think a lot of times we are told you have to do X, Y, Z, and sometimes it's just stepping out on faith, and in a belief that you have a story to tell, that you've done the preparation, and that you can, that what you want to contribute has a space in the world that will receive it. So, putting the director hat on is always fun, because the producer voice is in the back of my mind. Like, okay, you got so much money. Like, you might want to have, elephants and giraffes in a scene, but you can only have a kitty cat because you ain't got elephant and giraffe money. But what I do love is that I love stories. And when I go into the director mode, I am thinking about the story. I am thinking about how do we push the boundaries of so that we can see the world with all the colors that we see and that we live in and that we bring to the world, and just pulling from spirit, pulling from our ancestors, pulling from the richness of our history. And I would say that, as a director, I am very interested in how the past is a prelude to the moment that we are in. We do not live distant from everything that has come before us. And everything is quite cyclical. What you're going to see in the film tonight with voter suppression is, it might have been bully clubs and dogs in the 1950s, but as we hear in the news today, there is such an assault on the right and access to voting for Black and brown people. So it might be that, you can't use your student ID in Texas. You can use your gun ID to vote. You can, we're going to limit the amount of time where the advanced voting is, and make it during 9 to 5. Well, if you're voting, if you want to do advanced voting and you work, well then you can't take advantage of that. We don't have, voting as a national holiday. And so if you've worked all day, you go to vote, there's a really long line because the machines are down, the machines are broken, they move the location. All of these things are targeted weaponization on our community. And, so I love that to build this narrative of how we see our history, and we understand, how the game is being played against us. But when you see how the game is being played, you can mobilize. And we've seen that mobilization, and this film was used as a really important tool during the election last year.
I'm going to hold you there. I'm going to hold you there because we're going to talk about the strategy. We're going to talk about the use of film as social action strategy. But before we go there, you just mentioned this issue of narrative, because what's happening now is a prelude, right? And so there's a decision point when you're working on a documentary versus a narrative film. And most of us are maybe more familiar with the narrative type of film. So can you just talk a little bit about the difference between the documentary and the narrative film? Because we could just as easily have seen a film, a narrative film, right, about a woman in Georgia that has difficulty voting. And, and told a whole story around that. So can you just talk a little bit about the difference between documentaries and narrative films?
Well, I think with documentaries, what's amazing is there's always discovery. You know the top line of the story you're going to tell, but then you get in there and there's twists and turns, and you find unique ways to have an emotional connection, with your audience. And as you start spending time with a character, you're going to discover things you didn't know. So Stacey Abrams was working on a book. She shared the book. So we knew a lot about her life. We spent a lot of time with her. We knew obviously what she had done and had a sense of what was going to happen. And so that influenced actually making her a character in this film. She wasn't supposed to be in the film. She always says, "You tricked me," but it was not. We tricked her, but it was like, your story is the American story. It is symptomatic of the push and pull, of the struggle of your parents, of the what you've been able to do, and so it was like and she graciously understood why we incorporated her story into this. When you have a narrative, dramatic or comedic or film, you have a script, and you've got character A, B, C, D. They meet, they fall in love, they rob a bank, they go buy an island, and then you go, you film that, and then you go, wait a minute, maybe this order doesn't work, and you move the scenes around, but the story is what it is.
Yes.
What I love about documentaries is this discovery, because you go in thinking, I've read all these books, I'm looking at these articles, and I'm tracking what the Brennan Center is saying, it's what's happening around the country, and Congressman Lewis, Edmund Pettus Bridge. You think you know, and then there are things that happen that kind of change the narrative, but also change creatively. And we'll talk a little bit.
Well, let's go there now then. What was, even a documentary starts somewhere with an idea. How did All In, the fight for democracy, what was the catalyst or the germ, if you will, for developing this documentary?
Stacey Abrams, she is the North Star. After her 2018 gubernatorial run in Georgia, where there were, she's running against, her opponent is the Secretary of State. He's making the rules. I mean, there's so much tricky stuff happening, and he is throwing votes out, and there's so much manipulation. She comes so close to winning. And a lot of people came to her and they said, we want to tell this story. And she said, no, there's something bigger. There's a bigger story here. And so she went and she met with filmmakers and really resonated with our team, based on our personal histories, and also, our vision of not only what the film could be, but what a impact campaign could be.
Yes. Okay. Now, let's share with us, how was it working with Stacey Abrams? Because I think many of us have a vision of her, and we understand. Some of us see her, purely in a political lens. Some of us see her purely in the HBCU lens. Some of us see her as purely, a black woman just moving forward, taking charge. And some of us just see her as a voter suppression advocate. But she's all of those things.
Well, anti-voter suppression.
Anti-voter suppression activist. So how was it working with her, both as all of those things I just described, and as a participant using her image, identity, and ideas in the film.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that you didn't mention is she's a great storyteller.
Absolutely.
You know, I always loved talking to people when we were working on the project who shared, you know, she wrote a lot of romance novels under the pseudonym Selena Montgomery. And she wrote these romance novels when she was at Yale Law School, one of the most difficult law schools. Here's somebody writing romance novels on the side. So in addition to becoming this great leader, she knows the power of story. She released a thriller this summer called When Justice Sleeps. It's really fun. So, you know, Stacy came in with a very clear vision on the power of film to connect to different communities, to share a narrative in a way that would make people aware that what happened 200 years ago is happening right now.
Okay.
So she comes with such brilliance and kindness, but as a leader was very clear about the goals that she desired for this film to have for impact. She also, though, would say, I'm not a filmmaker, and I'm going to let you be in your lane. And shared with us, as I mentioned before, her book, so that we had a inner view to different components of her life that we could weave into the story, or that we could use when we were interviewing her. She opened up her contacts. If we were trying to get a certain person, she would say, when do you need them? I'd say Wednesday. She'd be like, done. So she was a full partner, and just someone who we leaned into on so many levels to complement, you know, taking really 400 years of history and putting it into 90 minutes, you know, in a way that it was accessible, hopefully, and inspirational.
Great. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Let's talk a little bit about the timing of the documentary. We had a discussion with the artists of the exhibition downstairs, and to us, oh, amazing, voter suppression is going on, and here's a film about voter suppression. But of course, these things are years in the making. So talk a little bit about the timing of this. You talked a little bit about that with your interaction with Ms. Abrams, but talk a little bit about that.
Well, we actually started the film a year before it came out. So that, you know, our schedule was real specific because we knew that, one, when we went out to talk to distributors, that we wanted a partner that could make a commitment to engaging with us in our campaign, to have the film out in September of 2020, really to support that rollout, because obviously, you know, you can't come out in December of 2020 and have impact. And so that was something that was very keen for us. And, you know, I think we all knew there were such stakes in the election on many levels, and you know, we all shared this desire to see, like, okay, how can we have this film, use it as a tool, engage with various communities, and they all had to kind of, you know, the domino effect. To influence change, and a change that, you know, we were all very committed to seeing.
Right, and that's a good segue into the use of the film and your social impact campaign that was associated with the film. Can you just talk a little bit about that, and can you also, perhaps if you can, tell us a little bit about how the pandemic might have changed the strategy for the social impact campaign?
Well, let me talk pandemic first. March of 2020, we did our last interview. The first week of March, we came home and everything shut down. We immediately had to go to remote with everyone working from home, and our team was literally all over the world. So that was, a big challenge because we knew we had to deliver the film. You deliver your film months in advance because then, all the marketing materials and getting it in the system has to take place so it can come out in September. But I have to say we had an incredible team, and I guess because we had nothing else to do but stay in our houses and work, that certainly aided, just really this, everyone, working 14 hours a day, 6-7 days a week to just deliver. When we started the film, we knew that an impact campaign had to accompany it. And we found partners to give us independent financing to support that impact campaign. I want to actually share with you what we did because it's pretty cool what we were able to accomplish. But after my musical interlude. All right, so we provided grants to 14 local organizations in 10, kind of like what we identified as battleground states, and they were able to register over 250,000 people to vote and engage with over 8.8 million voters with information. We traveled across 18 states, stopping in 48 cities on a voter education and registration bus tour. So we had socially distant outdoor community screenings, we shared information, we worked with 55 organizations, and we were able to register people. We created a curriculum called Grow a Voter with lesson plans in English and Spanish, and we shared it with over 1 million teachers. We had 20 teacher ambassadors across the country who actually helped other teachers to explain how to facilitate the curriculum. We had a 50-state ambassador program where we had influencers, everyone from Malcolm Jenkins to Gabby Sidibe to Don Cheadle, Gabby Union, who used their social media platform to reach an estimated 80 million people with accurate information on the voting process. We created over 140 pieces of digital content and a 4-part animated youth explainer series. We engaged on our website, allinforvoting.com, with around 150,000 people on the Voting Action Hub. We reached over 1 million people in Georgia, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina with messaging and hotline information via mobile billboards. There was 2,700 press pieces, which generated 1.3 billion impressions. We reached over 20,000 incarcerated people in Georgia with election packets, 250,000 people in Florida with targeted digital radio ads, and over 150 community educational influencer screenings, panels, and events.
Thank you for sharing that.
And I wanted to read all that because a lot of times you look at a film and you don't think about the long tail of what you can do. And we found these great partners. We brought, we partnered with everyone from Voto Latino to When We All Vote, Southern Poverty Law Center. We brought, at a very early stage, we shared like a little bit of the film, and we said to them, we want to give you this film. How can this film be of service to you?
Yes.
So, coming full circle to what I said in the beginning about what drives me, what's important for me in my work, I was really able to accomplish with our team and so many incredible supporters with this film.
Thank you so much, and we are so glad that you shared those statistics with us because this is a activist group. This is an activist group. This is an audience that is very much concerned with history and with current activism. I'm going to switch a little bit because I know that we talked about and you shared with us the social impact campaign. What do you think is one of the most surprising reactions that you have received in the, I guess it's almost a year that the film has been released? This is the first year the film's released.
I always think of the story when Stacy shared this with some of her young people who work with her, and she said, you know, what's happening now, it's like a poll tax. They're like, well, what's a poll tax? And then they saw the film, and then they got that there was that aha. They were already committed. They had boots on the ground. They were working, you know, to get people to register. And I don't care who you vote for, but you know what? We have fought. We have lost so much for this right that is continuously being challenged, and for this young person and many others to understand what happened and what the historical resonance of it all is, and to really put fire in their belly, I think was like just really just made my heart sing.
Yes, great. All right, I would like to wrap it up now. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us? What I did not do was address some of the questions that I had about some of the animations, the use of the animations, etc. But I think it would be great that we could just go to the film.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Because that's the meat of the matter. But is there anything else that I did not ask that you'd like to share with the group?
No, you are incredible. I think we need to give you a talk show.
Thank you, Lisa. And I do have to say that when we were in the planning of this, and everybody here knows Madge, so they know that she may be quiet and unassuming, but when Madge gives you a task to do, she's going to make sure that she pursues you until you finish that task. And when she asked me to do the Mistress of Ceremonies for the Monday event, I says, okay, that's fine. And then I'm looking down the page and Lisa Cortes is going to be here? And I was like, well, I can do that too. Thank you so much, because you are, again, an award-winning director, producer, and we are very honored for you to be here. It's always important to have context when you see new work. So thank you.
Yes. Here, here.